and KFC. One of the things that they had that really prompted me to be in franchising, outside of using capital from other people to grow your business and grow your organisation, was that what they did was show me how to brand and what I was aiming for. And what I was aiming for was this common denominator, that every time you go into a KFC or go to McDonald's, you find something always the same. You get the same image all the time, you get the same presentation, you get the standards all the time, the toilets are clean. I mean, let's be honest, if you go to a dirty McDonald's toilet, it won't be long before it's clean. And that standard started putting great standards in the marketplace, and that was something that I wanted to reflect in my business. So I was lucky, I had a couple of companies out there I looked at and said, this is where I want to be in standards. Not necessarily, everybody thought, you're silly, you can't do that with meat. But we didn't do it with meat, we did it with chicken, but it's the same thing. So we set standards. We set our barriers to get to that next level by utilising their standards and their aim and what they were aiming for and their standards and their training manuals and their franchise agreements. We set all those standards and we aimed for that very quickly. And to me, not having them in the marketplace and not identifying that at that extra time, it must sound like I must be having a heart attack or something. It's not having McDonald's and those people in the marketplace or somebody that's already set some sort of bar for you to aim for, you probably find it very difficult. I heard last month you had Tom Potter there. Tom was a very lucky fella. Honestly, he had Pizza Hut, he had other franchise chains out there, and he could actually say, well, there is a franchise chain, there's a model, and there's a model that I think they're not doing it well in. And taking that franchise model, taking his best bit that he wanted that to, and put it into the marketplace and make it work. So that every business out there, there's an opportunity to take something from and actually make it grow. So there's nothing you can't do if you want to keep going. So I'll move on to the next point. What are the key elements of making your business successful? Well, I've given you a quick picture of where I've come from and what drove me to, from a branding point of view. The number one priority, I think, in business and what to make a business successful is the people around you. If you don't surround yourself with the right people at the right time, and if you were serious about growing your business, you have to have people that are committed and committed in your vision. And sharing your vision with somebody is so hard. To get them to embrace your vision and understand where you want to get to, and for them on top of that to have the motivation you have to get there, is the highest priority to get into the business. In partnerships, I'll gather you both together, you've got to be, your partner's got to share your vision as much as you do. And they've got to be willing to earn it and work in that relationship. I remember right back that I arrived in, as I said, I arrived in Sunnybank Hills. I had a cousin who worked in Redcliffe and had a house in Redcliffe. I thought, oh, I'm alone, I'll ring her up. I went up to there, I met her husband. He worked for the post office. He specialised, believe it or not, in training programs, things like that. So it wasn't long before I had him boning chickens on his kitchen table, and it wasn't long before he was actually committed to come into the business with me. And he took the things that I have in my head and what I wanted to achieve on one side of it, wrote it down and documented it. It was somebody like him, having him beside me, sharing in that vision, and he's a partner also. The sharing that vision had helped us get through that hard process, to get that motivation. Heaven's sake, and I must say, there was another chap who come along not long after, we were about 8 stores along, a chap called Paul Barwell. In fact, I can actually highly recommend Paul to come down and talk to us one day. He's an ex-franchise McDonald's franchisee. He brought a Lenards, loved the concept, as he'll tell you, and he brought in. Come in around about number 5 shop. And at that stage, believe it or not, I was selling franchises. And it was fantastic how I felt. I felt really good, I'm selling it. And it wasn't until somebody like you come along and said, look, you're only selling businesses, you're not really selling franchises, but you're not actually servicing the franchisee at the level they should be getting. Again, as I said about McDonald's, The standards are there, but you've got to have emotion and passion to service a franchisee. You've got to know and have an expectation about what they're wanting before they want it. So he come in beside me, and he worked on our franchise model and our franchise agreement and our relationship with our franchisee over the next 15 odd years, 18 years. And as I said, people are very important. But one of the things about people that you've got to be careful of, as you grow, getting the right mix of people in your business. The mix is probably one of the most difficult things. As I reflect over the last 20 odd years now, I've gone through and hired through different people. And as I said earlier, you go through times where you hire people, and to get them to share your vision and motivate them to be working with you is totally different. And my expectation for having people around me working with me and working on the business was a lot more than some people wanted to give. At the same time, some people think differently. We're all different. Every company, I think, should have a good balance between what I call creative style of person and what I would say a more of a structured style of person. And at any one time, your business could be outweighed with both. And you could be going in one different direction one year, you could be going in another direction another year. So it's very critical from a manager's point of view and an owner's point of view to be able to identify that at certain times. If you don't identify it, you could be stayed, going nowhere, or you could be going totally 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction. So it's a very important thing about people. So just reflecting on that, people are very, very important. What's the hardest thing in keeping a business successful over 20 years? Well, as I said, keeping people on board, but more importantly, keeping people sharing a vision and communication. That's such a thing. In franchising, it's one of the hardest things in the world. There was an article in the paper just recently about franchisees are at this stage in the franchising community complaining that the franchisor doesn't communicate properly. And that does happen regularly. And it's not that the franchisor doesn't communicate, it doesn't communicate the correct way of communicating. And so you've got to be very careful on communication right through your business, through your people, all the way through. And I highly recommend, over the years, I highly recommend it. In our company, we literally had to go on 2 to 3 different occasions to go out and get a corporate psychologist to come in and look at our business. Now everybody says, geez, you're sick, you need a psychologist. Well, trust me, no. It's the best thing we could ever do. Every time we've got one, we've found something more about ourselves that we didn't know. And you've got to look internally all the time. Trust me, it's such a thing you've got to be honest about. You've got to be honest to yourself all the time. You can't always be right. Somebody else around you could be right. What advice would you give somebody starting up in today's business? Well, this is an interesting one, isn't it? Well, I can say it in one word. Is your business relevant? Is your product relevant to the customer? Or is it just a fantasy that you have? Is it something you think is okay, and you think it might work, and you have a passion for it, and you do all the tests in the world, but at the end of the day, does it deliver what the consumer wants, and will they get off their bum and come and buy your product? And will they buy it if you get off your bum and take it to them? I think the relevance of a product is so important. I see so many people with so many ideas, and honestly, the relevance of it in the marketplace, not necessarily going to get a customer to get up off their bum and buy that product. So to me, today in a business, so much work's got to be done on the consumer. So much honest answering to yourself, gut feeling, is whether you're doing it because you love it, it's your passion, rather than whether it's a reality thing that's going to come off at the consumer end. And I see it so often, so often. And as we know, we hear about 80% of small businesses in Australia are franchised and they're successful, but they're only successful because the franchisor is successful. There are so many businesses going out there today